Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Brady Joker here, and welcome back to another Directors Ranked. Today, I am excited to be doing Danny Boyle. For me personally, I think Danny Boyle is one of my most respected directors out there, as he has dabbled in every single genre imaginable. This dude has done so much, ranging from sci-fi, adventure, horror, kids, drama, drugs, just so much. And even though he doesn't nail all of these movies, I give him the credit for at least having the ambition to take on these challenges. And of course, he does nail it in a few of them, which we will talk about much later. But for now, that's all I have to say about Danny Boyle, so let's just get on with the list. Keep in mind, this is totally subjective in my personal opinion. So yeah, let's just get on with number 13. Okay, so Millions is by far his worst film for me. Look, a lot of his other, bad movies I can have a lot of fun with. This film I don't. It's just so boring. It's so boring, and I hated the characters so much. Stupid Damien was such a twat in the whole thing. He was so stupid, and I get that he's a kid, but I don't care. The premise was okay. Danny Boyle is a lot better at making more adult films, but again, I respect him for at least trying to make a kid's film. It just really didn't work for me. I mean, the film looks super outdated too. It just doesn't look nice either. I don't know, this is far and away Danny Boyle's worst film in my opinion, because it gets nothing out of me. I just don't like it. Okay, man, I really wanted to like this movie. I really wanted to like Yesterday, and I had heard mixed things going into it. I heard some people that were like, yeah, no, it's actually really cool. And then I heard some people say, yeah, this is terrible. And it's pretty bad, man. It's pretty bad. The premise for this film was so promising. I like the Beatles. The Beatles are pretty cool. I love Let It Be so much. But man, they took this awesome sounding premise and just completely turned it into a cliche, boring, predictable love story. Like, really? You have so many other love films, Danny. You needed to just separate yourself from love for one movie. Just one. As well as I think this is one of his worst acted films. If it weren't for Millions, I would say this is probably his worst acted film. Not that the acting in this thing is bad per se, but it just feels so dull in some moments. As well as we got Ed Sheeran acting. Come on now. I also found it to be pretty unfunny at points. It just made me roll my eyes. It was way too long. It just did not do a lot for me. Except I did enjoy the first 30 to 40 minutes when we were still kind of focused on the whole Beatles aspect of the film until it turned into a stupid, cliche love story by the end. Again, I respect Danny Boyle so much as a filmmaker for trying this style of film. It's this action thriller mystery that has twists and turns, and yeah, it just doesn't really work that well. What Trance does best, in my opinion, is setting up the film. I actually think this film has a very interesting and well thought out setup with all the characters and the moving pieces. However, by the end of it, the twists and the turns just sort of fall flat for me, and that's because, once again, Danny Boyle turns it into a love story. Look, Danny, I get it. You like romance, but you can't turn an action thriller suspense film into a romance. I don't know, it just feels like he's relying so hard on the element of romance that it just takes away from some films for me. And that's coming from a guy whose second favorite film is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I love romance films. But for me, I just don't like it in an action suspense movie. You can have elements of romance, but it becoming a central focus in the movie by the end just takes away from the action and the suspense, in my opinion. I don't know, the twists and turns didn't really work for me either. The performances are solid all around. I think James McAvoy does a great job here, but I just didn't love the film. Again, I felt like it was a bit too long, even though it was an hour and 40. It just kind of dragged on at times. The pacing wasn't great. But I did have a better time with this than some of his other films. I thought, again, the setup here was great. I really liked the first couple, 30 minutes here. I thought the setup was really nice. I liked how it was introduced. But overall, I didn't really get much from this experience. Look, I understand that a lot of people put A Life Less Ordinary as his weakest film. However, I can't do that. I don't know. I just had a blast with this movie. And while it certainly is not, good, it's a pretty mid film in my opinion, I still just had a good time watching it. I think the whole, angel stuff was a little weird and kind of forced into the plot. But Danny Boyle, you did it. You made a romance film where the romance was the central focus point of the film, and it paid off. I think Cameron Diaz and Ewan McGregor do great here as this complete polar opposite couple here, and I really like their chemistry. As well as Ewan McGregor gives an unforgettable performance in this one. That stand-up, that musical number that he did in the middle of the film. I mean, Cameron Diaz does great, but man, Ewan McGregor kills it, and I wasn't expecting it. I thought it would be funny bad. No, he actually sang his heart out there. It was really nice. I don't know. I had a great time with this film. Definitely check it out if you love these kind of spoof romance films. Okay, here's my big hot take of the video. Yep, Slum Dog Millionaire is in the bottom half of my Danny Boyle ranking. And look, maybe I was unfair to this movie. Out of all of Danny Boyle's films, this is the only one I haven't watched in 2024. I watched all of his films in one go in a couple of weeks, with the exclusion of T2 Trainspotting because I watched that 2 months ago. I watched Slum Dog Millionaire in July of last year, and it didn't do a lot for me, so I really had a very little urge to rewatch this one, but maybe I should have to be a bit fair to it, but I don't care. This movie just was boring. Flat out, I just thought it was boring. I think it has all of the elements of Danny Boyle being a great director. I can see him definitely pouring his art and his love into this film, but it just didn't do anything with me. I didn't connect to the story. I didn't really care for the story, even though it is a very nice story. I just didn't really like it. I don't know. It was very predictable and felt really plot convenient for the character. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. That's really it. Okay, so having the beach over Slumdog Millionaire is a very crazy take when I'm looking at other Danny Boyle lists. So I'm gonna have to defend myself really hard for me. I really liked The Beach. In fact, I just had such a fun time with it. I don't think this is an excellent film. I don't even really think it's a great film. But I think it's a good film that I just had a blast with. Leo gives such a weird performance in this one where it's like a predecessor to Shutter Island for him, where he's just going absolutely crazy on this island. And it's hilarious to watch in this one because he's just so young. He's a young little guy in this one. I think all the side performances are also really great. I really enjoyed Tilda Swinton in this one. She was very weird, very mistrustful. You don't really know what her character really feels, and I like it. The journey to this was the whole setup was something I was very not ready for. I thought most of this movie was gonna be Leo and these two other people trying to find this sacred island, but no, they get there after 30 to 40 minutes, and then the rest of the movie is just bonkers insane, which I really like. I don't know, it was a movie that worked really well for me. I like Danny Boyle's direction, even if it's not his best film. I just had a good time with it. Another film that is typically ranked a bit higher, but for me, Sunshine has just gone down the more I sit with it. I personally am just not a big fan of these space sci-fi films. They just don't hit with me on the first watch as hard as other films do. And that's because I feel the premise is so weird, the sun exploding in recent years. I think this one takes place in 2050, which that does seem like a long time, but I don't think the sun is gonna explode that soon. I think it'll happen in a couple million years, so I don't know. And I get it's a film, but still. And I don't know, the last act of the movie takes a really weird turn where it kind of goes from this mission sci-fi film into a horror movie. And it's kind of weird. As well as the final scenes of the film is just it's basically just 2001: A Space Odyssey, if you've seen that. Kinda. Where it just kind of makes you rethink everything. Kinda. I don't really know what happens at the end of the film, but all I know is that like I did enjoy the middle act of the film a lot. The beginning was very slow, and I didn't really like the beginning that much, and then it picked up, and then the ending kind of just threw it all out the window. Killian was good, Chris Evans was good. I very surprised to see Michelle, the woman from Everything Everywhere All at Once. I can't remember her last name, but it was great to see her in this. She was also great. It was just a fun, fine movie that has a really, really strong middle section, but just lacks from the ending. Okay, having Shallow Grave this high might make some people mad, but let me rest my case. Shallow Grave was Danny Boyle's first feature film, and I kind of love it. Okay, I don't love it, but it's a ton of fun. That's how I feel like I'm describing his earlier films, is that they're just a lot of fun. You see this young filmmaker just having fun with his films, like obviously we have Trainspotting, which is a masterpiece, but when you have like The Beach, Life Less Ordinary, and even Shallow Grave, like there was no chance of these movies being regarded as one of the best of all time. Like these are very simple but really fun movies that you can just throw on and have a fun time with, and that's what Shallow Grave is at its finest. Our three central performers here, again, stand out. Ewan McGregor. I mean, it's just they're dynamic, and their chemistry through this film is super fun. Watching the one dude spiral out of control is also just hilarious. And I just really like all the twists and turns this movie takes. It leaves you on the edge of your seat. You're like, oh my god, what's going on? What's gonna happen? I don't know. It's really fun. I like it a lot. Okay, I love Trainspotting. I think that's pretty like set in stone at this point. If you've seen any of my videos in the last couple months, where I have watched Trainspotting 3 times this year, I love the movie to death. And in my humble opinion, this is a great follow-up to it. Look, if I had to complain hard about one thing in this film, it's the atmosphere, the tone, and the feel of the movie, where when you feel the original Trainspotting, the tone is so dark, it's so grimy, it feels like a documentary. This film is a complete opposite, where it's turned around, it's cinematic, it has beautiful CG shots and drones, and it doesn't feel like Trainspotting. And I get that the characters are in a whole new era of their lives, but I mean, spoiler alert, Ewan McGregor, he gets back on heroin for a minute. Like, he comes back into this dark and grimy world that his friends are still stuck in. The movie shouldn't feel like a full, beautiful turnaround, because it's kind of not. And that's kind of my big issue with the film, is that it doesn't feel like a Trainspotting sequel. However, the character work here and the writing is what saves it. Even if I think the ending is a bit cliche, I think everything before that is excellent character work at its finest. I just love all of the characters' journeys, the way that they carry on from the first film, and the way that they do end. It's nice. So I just really like T2 Trainspotting. I know some people despise it for some reason, but I personally really like this film. 28 Days Later is Danny Boyle's only true horror film, and he absolutely nails it. And I know, I get the memes, it's been absolutely memed to death. I get this film looks like it was shot on a microwave. I know, but I honestly think that adds to the disgusting, grimy, gritty feel of the film. I personally just really like it. All of the performances in here are great. Brendan Gleeson gives an unforgettable one that is so emotional, so like attached, you know, you get so attached to his character, and I really like his whole character, and the performance is great. As well as Killian gets his big debut here, and of course, my boy won the Oscar 22 years later. So I really like this movie. I love the beginning. Obviously, the beginning is so like engaging, it's so intriguing, you're like, what is happening? The middle of the movie is also great with Brendan Gleeson's whole family and character, and then the end you get this military base. It's such a natural and cohesive film that doesn't, you know, stutter, it doesn't have any hiccups. It's a very nice flowing film from beginning to end. If I had one real issue with it, it's honestly just the fact I don't really like horror movies all that much. They just get such a little reaction out of me, and horror films always leave like the least amount of impact on my brain, as if I just like don't care about horror movies that much. But this one, while watching it, I had an absolute blast of a time, and I could not recommend this enough. Steve Jobs, man, wow, no one told me that this film was actually gonna be insanely good. Like, I really liked this movie so much more than I thought I would, because going into this, I did not want to like watch this. I was so not interested in anything that this movie was gonna say. And then I finished it and I was like, wow, this was awesome. This was excellent. I think this is probably his best directed film, where it's so, like what I was saying with 28 Days Later, it's like that, but like better. Because this is only 3 stages of his life, and yet it feels so natural. Like, everything flows so well from one scene to another. There's no filler in here. Every scene has importance and very nicely written and acted dialogue. It's just really good. Again, I don't care at all about Steve Jobs or Apple. That's just not my interest, so that does tank it a little bit. But by the end, I really did care for Steve Jobs. I mean, again, I don't really care about the products, but that's not really the point of the film. The point of the film is to show the life behind this genius of a guy who made like the iMac and stuff. I think it's really great. Okay, so my top 2 films here are in my top 15 films of all time. Yep, my top 15 favorites of all time, starting with 127 Hours. Holy moly, this movie is incredible. I don't get the very neutral reaction to this movie. I don't get it. Okay, I understand that it is a dude trapped in one location the entire film. It has a very gruesome and very gory ending that I'm sure turned a lot of people off, but genuinely, I don't get how much neutralness this movie has received, because I think it is a masterpiece. Just a story about morality, reflection, just life in general, like survival, the will to survive. It's all there, and it's such a powerful film. It hits me so hard, as well as this was the film that got me into cinema. So I watched this at a very young age, an age where I definitely shouldn't have watched this movie, but this was honestly the first film where I was like, oh my god, the fact that like this is real and that somebody made this film so incredible, it blew my mind as a 3rd grader. It really did. As well as Franco's performance in this thing was the first performance where I really watched it, and it just opened my eyes to the art of acting and, again, filmmaking. So this film does mean a lot to me, and it hits me so hard because it is such a nostalgic-based movie, but even without the nostalgia, I just think it's an excellent film. Again, the fact that Danny Boyle is able to make the movie feel so quick. Like, the movie is not slow-paced at all. I mean, it's a quick hour and a half, and yet it feels like an hour and a half. It feels perfectly paced, even though it's a dude trapped in one location the entire film, pretty much. I truly love this movie. I want to dedicate a whole video to it because I have so much more to say about it. But I gotta keep this thing quick because video's already getting too long. Let's go on to number 1. And Trainspotting, number 1, top 10 of all time. What more do I have to say about this movie that I haven't already said in previous videos? I watched it in March, I watched it in February, I watched it in January. If you want to see my in-depth, more, like every single month I talk about it, I have nothing new to add. It's one of my favorite screenplays of all time. It has some of my favorite performances of all time, some of my favorite scenes of all time. It's genuinely just a perfect film with one of the best openings, one of the best, endings. It's truly just a perfect film from beginning to end, and I love it. I get it. It's about drugs. Some people don't like drugs, but that's why I love it. It's a dark comedy, which I think adds to the film so much, and especially its rewatchability, because when you have this very dark movie, it can tank the rewatchability, like Requiem for a Dream. I don't think anybody watches Requiem for a Dream and is like, yeah, I can rewatch that again like tomorrow. I can watch Trainspotting every day because of its dark comedy. It's very quick-witted characters, but also very tragic characters. It's such a dark film with such great moments. It's just genuinely, I'm thinking, like, I can't think of more words to describe this movie. I'm not good at describing perfect films other than just saying they're perfect. Like, this is a flawless film. Go watch Trainspotting if you haven't. Oh my god. Okay, that's my Danny Boyle list. Bit of a smaller director. I don't see many people ranking his films, but I think he's definitely a filmmaker that needs to be talked about more because, again, I respect the hell out of him. I think he's great. But yeah, what filmmaker should I rank next? If you have any ideas, put them down below. I'm saying next is probably going to be Denis, whatever his last name is. Just finished Blade Runner 2049, literally like 30 minutes ago. So, yeah. That's it. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, evening, or night, or whenever you're watching this, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.